You found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Reacts number 91. Did dinosaurs have feathers? I am here with everyone's favorite goblin. Say hi, Chesh.
Hello! Hi, Josh!
There you go.
Hey, hi, hi! What's going on? It's me!
Yeah, you're back early, actually. Because I haven't hit another 1,000 even, so you're back a little early.
Maybe by the end of this stream.
Yeah, maybe that'll happen.
Like and share.
I only need like 870
Hey,
something everybody, or 60 something everybody, so, you know, like and share, and maybe 860 something people will come by. Hit that subscribe button.
You never know.
Yeah. Hey, people are spamming some Murphys in the chat. I do appreciate that.
I love Murphy. I haven't done any Murphy art in a long time. I should do some Murphy art.
Good.
That would be
Definitely
fun.
Should. I also appreciate that he usually wears that pot, because according to you, apparently he has cornrows under that pot, and I did not want to model cornrows. That sounds like a pain.
I mean, to be fair.
Actually, it's less of a pain now than it was when I first modeled Murphy. It might actually be an okay thing now.
Ooh, a Murphy remodel? Oh.
It would just be a Murphy adding hair. I wouldn't remodel the whole Murphy.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, I'm too lazy.
We don't need a whole new Murphy.
Right. All right, we got a few things to read here. First, I'm the Ziggernaut bitch for B2022, who's been a member for 18 months and is at the amniote level, says, let's all raise a toast to the best specimens of Ceratosaurus nasicornis and Globulus satsei, respectively, with a big old happy face. So, cheers. And then, I'm the Ziggernaut bitch B2022, also gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships, which means we're going to take 5 drinks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Which reminds me, I am drinking a mojito. What do you got there?
Tea. It doesn't work with tea.
It works fine with tea, because here's the thing, guys. While we are doing the drinking rules, and I do explain them on Tuesday, you absolutely are welcome to play along with tea, coffee, water, juice, soda, a vape pen, high-fiving your buddy. I don't care. This is just for fun. It doesn't matter. I'm drinking a mojito in the middle of the day.
I wish I had a mojito.
You should have got a mojito.
I got the mint leaves for it.
Yeah, just get some rums, get some simple syrup, you know.
I don't.
You know how to make simple syrup, right?
My gin's all gone.
That's not even rum, though.
Yeah, I know.
In case anyone's wondering, simple syrup is very easy to make. Equal volume sugar, water, put them on the stove, and then boil that down while stirring slowly until you just can't see the sugar anymore. Boom, simple syrup.
I mostly meant that it doesn't work with tea. 1, because it's hot, and 2, because it's weird to drink in, like, shots.
Yeah, that's fair. All right.
Doesn't feel right.
Alex Markle says, do you think we'd be watching you if we had friends? I mean... Hey, the fact that you're here on a Saturday morning is, I'm not going to read too much into it.
It's
right.
Saturday afternoon.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, it is, even for me. All right, so, yes. We are here primarily to take a look at this ICR video. So, for those of you who don't know, ICR does a video podcast. I think they also do release it as an actual regular old podcast. But I don't know, because I don't even have any podcast apps as far as I can remember. So I'm out of the loop when it comes to regular old podcasts. I never really got into it. Nothing against them. I just never got into it. But in this one, this was actually sent to me by someone. I don't super remember who. It might be in my Twitter messages. Meta
Geeky says that Dapper has been keeping me sane in the last month or so. I say that sanity is overrated.
Well, I mean, I am trying to
come to the dark side. we are going. We don't need sanity.
So, yeah, I'm not sure exactly who sent this to me, but it was sent to me, and it did seem like a pretty good one to address. But I had also just finished doing scripts, a 4-part script on this exact same podcast, and I didn't want to script it again, so I figured it would be a good thing to do live. Let's see. Dr. Dino says, any room for a feathered theropod to join today? Maybe at the break. I don't want to basically interrupt the. There's a whole lot of stuff I would have to do in terms of like in the back production wise to add in a second person. So,
Yeah.
maybe
Gotta
over
set
the
it up
break.
ahead of time.
Yeah, it's adding someone midstream is always very disruptive.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so the this is did dinosaurs have feathers? And so ICR, as you might know, is doing this whole big thing about birds aren't dinosaurs and dinosaurs didn't have feathers. And their goal for this, I think, is to try to avoid the implications that birds evolved from dinosaurs. But the problem is
Did
that
somebody bust into their kick in the door to their podcast office and throw a plucked chicken on the on the desk and say, "Behold, a dinosaur"?
yeah. So the problem is that all of the arguments that they use as to why dinosaurs or birds aren't dinosaurs and why dinosaurs didn't have feathers ultimately work just as well as like why aren't whales mammals? Which is to say they don't work at all. But if you were to take them seriously, you could just as easily apply it to whales being mammals, which is something they accept. So we are here with Ivana Semide, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing her last name right. I've never heard anyone say it. So Ivana, I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong. If you watch this and you want to correct me, feel free. I don't want to get your name wrong. And actually, of the two hosts that they have for this podcast, I think she's the better one. They have her and Trey Bowling. And Trey is just kind of awkward, and he steps over his words a lot, and he takes these really long pauses, and he also seems to be mostly bored. Whereas Ivana she's a better speaker. She seems more enthusiastic. She's generally more articulate. Like, she's better at verbally communicating off the cuff than Trey is, I think. So I do like it better when she's here. And the quote-unquote scientist opposite her is Timothy Clary, who is one of the ICR geology guys, which of course is why they are going to drag him out to talk about biology. Or, because that's how creationists do, right? Why bother bringing the actual person who knows what they're talking about?
Have you considered doing a parody version of that's what the lemur do? Like the facts.
Oh, the True Facts guy?
Yeah, the True Facts guy. Do a
That
True
could be
Facts
fun.
about True Facts about creationists, or True Facts about Ken Ham, True Facts about flat earthers.
That could be fun.
That could be very good.
All right. So we got only a couple more things to get in, or one more thing really, which is to say, hey, we got the donations thing, and once again, if we can get it high enough, you guys can get Ben some free pizza, which he always appreciates. So, and we could get another fancy avatar. Now, I didn't have a poll for the last fancy avatar. I'm going to be using my October avatars for the next couple videos, and then there will be a series of polls that, however many times we get to the fancy avatar number, will be how many polls we have for the next few avatars. So it'll be fancy October spooky avatars for those of you who have early access for a little while, and then we'll switch over to the fancy avatars, and then we'll switch back to default if we, run out of fancy avatar videos. But with that,
I was about to start singing spooky, scary skeletons, and then realized you would just complain to me that you keep getting notifications that my videos keep getting demonetized.
yeah, I do keep getting those. Because in case anyone doesn't know, I'm a manager on Chesh's channel, so when her videos get demonetized, I get a notification on my phone.
Which is all the time.
It's pretty
all
frequent.
The time.
It's often more than once a day.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna hit play on this. We'll see what we got.
I am a naughty goblin.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Creation Podcast, a show where we discuss the science that confirms Scripture. I want to thank all of our listeners.
I do want to point out that the science that confirms Scripture is essentially none. Occasionally, bits of archaeology will confirm some small part of the narrative of the Bible, like that certain kings were real kings, or that certain Roman officials were real Roman officials. But by and large, that's like history and archaeology. Other than those, there's no science that in particular confirms the Bible.
I feel like there's not enough people that are doing stuff like these people are doing that is just about Bible history. And I don't mean like the history inside of the Bible, I mean like the history of the book itself. And I think that if more people talked about that and then talked about like the evidence around it and like the scientific or archaeological or the historical evidence around that, and then starting from that foundation to then move into, well, what did the Bible get right about this or right about that? I think you'd have a better time.
That could be interesting, yeah.
I think it would be interesting too, yeah, because then you wouldn't have boxed yourself into a secular versus non-secular world of people who would be interested or find that information valuable.
Right. All right, here we go.
Listeners and viewers for tuning in. I'm your host, Ivana, and today we're joined by Dr. Timothy Clary.
Sorry, did I say Ivana? What did I say?
Ivana, well, whatever, she just
Ivana?
told you. It's
okay,
Ivana.
It's Ivana, yeah. All right.
Ivana.
Ivana, next time say your last name too, so I can pronounce your name correctly. I hate getting people's names wrong. And the thing is, like, unlike Timothy Clary, I don't really have anything against Ivana because, like, she's just someone who's a podcast host. She doesn't know any better.
Sure.
Presumably.
Yeah, not a scientist.
Right, yeah, she doesn't have a PhD.
Do I get to use that excuse?
I mean...
I'm just an artist.
Basically.
I can't possibly know any better.
If you were just interviewing a creationist and you didn't give as much pushback as I wanted, I would think that would be a good excuse.
Yeah, all right, fair.
ICR research scientist and geologist. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Clary.
Oh, it's always great to be here.
Well, today I wanted to talk about something I actually had the opportunity to experience for the first time just a few years ago. I went to a very well-known museum, and as I was looking at their T-Rex exhibit for the first time, I had witnessed what I guess we call feathered dinosaurs with the adolescence of the T-Rex. I noticed that there were feathers, and they explain a little bit of where that came from, but I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what that is about as far as feathered dinosaurs, and is this to help connect some idea of birds and dinosaurs being related?
Well, the secular community, the evolutionary...
So first I want to point out, no, it's not, right? The reason that you might give a T-Rex feathers is because of something called phylogenetic bracketing, right? So think about it like this. We have a group of animals called amphicyonids, and they're pretty closely related to both dogs and bears. And dogs and bears are in this group called carnivora, which also includes the cats. Okay. But we've never seen a living amphicyonid, ever. We just know that they have a skeleton that looks like a really big bear with a long tail, or sorry, a smallish bear with a long tail, or like a really big dog, but with like bear-like feet and a bear-like head. Okay.
Like my dog.
Kind of, yeah. So, what do we do with that when we give it a life reconstruction? We've never found fur associated with amphicyonids. But we know that dogs have fur, we know that bears have fur, and we know that the less closely related cats have fur. So when you make your life reconstruction of, say, amphicyon, which is like the type genus for amphicyonids, do you put fur on it? What do you think, Chesh?
Well, I think that particularly if you're talking about doing the art or doing the science, I think you're looking at two different ideas. I like the idea of that you're going to put fur on it,
right.
But I also like the idea of artists that work in this field explicitly like exploring a little bit further, but
sure.
It less has to do with whether or not you're putting fur on it and more has to do with what type of coloring do you think it has? How much fat or like muscle and body weight does the creature have? Because like there's so many video or pictures I've seen where somebody has taken like dinosaurs and just like made them more bird. And so like they've just like expanded their body a lot more. Like you look at an elephant skull and you wouldn't guess an elephant like it has a giant trunk on it necessarily if you don't know, right?
Well, yeah,
so,
although because we are aware of where all those muscle attachment points are, we actually would now be able to tell.
Yes.
So, let's see. Glenn Hoven, full relation, says, of course Dino had feathers. The evidence is very clary. I get it because it's Timothy Clary.
But
and then Crow, not Confucius Hornimus, for €23.99, which is an odd number, but okay, says, our cat Nellie has been missing since September 10th. Oh, she turned up 15 miles from our house. Oh, okay, she's quite a bit skinnier.
This is a roller coaster, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she's quite a bit skinnier, but is otherwise healthy and back home safe and sound, and I'm feeling very happy with a cat and a heart emoji.
Okay.
Well, congratulations. That is awesome. It is.
Don't do that.
Yeah, that was a roller coaster of emotion right there. That was a lot. I was
Oh
like, oh no, what's
God.
happening?
Start with we just found our cat who was 15 miles up from our house. She went missing since September 10th, and she looks healthy and is back home, albeit a little thinner. Please
No.
order this differently. The order of magnitude that you just sent me. I'm done. Jesus Christ.
So thank you very much, Crow, and I'm very happy that your cat is back.
I've never been emotionally trolled so hard on a stream. Holy.
Okay, so right. Phylogenetic bracketing. So while it is true that we don't know what color we should give of Amphicyone or anything like that, right? We do know that the chance that it didn't have fur is pretty low. So similarly, when we look at Tyrannosaurus rex, we can say, okay, well, its close relatives, like Eutyrannus, definitely had fuzzy integument that was made of what we call protofeathers. And even animals less closely related to it, like other members of, say, Coelurosauria, like the Maniraptorans, some of them even had, like, pinnaceous feathers. Then when we go outside of Coelurosauria, we have some evidence for, fuzzy integument in other animals. They're also theropods. So we conclude that there's a pretty good chance that at least at some point in its life, T-Rex would have had a similar integument. And that is not about connecting birds and dinosaurs. Because here's one of the things that I want creationists to understand, and I want everyone to understand about scientists in relation to creationism. Scientists are not doing their work in an effort to prove evolution to you, or to disprove young Earth creationism to you. They are trying to learn new things about their field of study, and the fact that there are people out there who think that a better explanation is physically impossible magical nonsense does not really matter to them. So that's an important point to put out there.
The community now really believes that.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, yeah, but Dapper, what even is a feather?
Well, we're gonna see if they define it for us, because they might. And if they don't, then we can talk about that.
Birds and dinosaurs are the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so when they talk about dinosaurs, they talk about non-avian dinosaurs, whereas we just call them dinosaurs.
Right.
But they're
right, but that's ambiguous, because you're well aware that at least the scientific consensus is that Dinosauria includes aves. Which means
weaponizing loose language. No.
Well, that is a classic move from creationists.
Bingo card.
Yeah.
They think birds are dinosaurs, so they actually will say in many of their videos or TV shows or even in their writing that when you're eating a Thanksgiving turkey, you're eating a dinosaur. Like, to me,
I mean, you are, but let's see if they, more importantly, even define dinosaur. Because here's one of the hallmarks of birds aren't dinosaur media from creationists. It never actually defines dinosaur in a way that would actually allow you to tell the difference between dinosaurs and any other animals. Sometimes they define it in a way that would allow you to eliminate most non-dinosaur animals, but not all. So one of the more common ways to define a dinosaur that I hear from creationists is they're reptiles that stand upright. Okay, well, first, that doesn't eliminate birds. So, because you haven't defined reptile in a way that would eliminate birds. But second, it would also include a whole bunch of things that are neither birds nor dinosaurs, like many of the Triassic crocodile line animals like Postosuchus and Rausuchus and things like that. And so it's that's a problem.
This is a thing that Monty and I talked about on Friday. We were talking about social definitions and social expectations versus scientific definitions, because you cannot apply scientific You cannot apply scientific definitions or expect social language to follow technical terminology, because the technical terminology is specific to that field.
Yeah.
Right? If you say theory and you're talking about biology, you're talking about something different than if you're talking about theory and music, even though those are a lot closer together than game theory, right? Or a movie, I've got a theory about the history of this character or whatever, right? There's the socially acceptable terminology in context is very, very different. The same thing applies with the people trying to argue about trans people and what is a woman. It's the woman is a social term, not to be conflated. We don't speak in technical terminology when we're talking to each other because, one, that would be confusing, two, that would take too long, and we're people. Like,
Yeah.
nobody, no, it's not going to happen. Even scientists don't do that.
Right. If you were in the context of like the doctor's office, they're probably not going to care about what a woman is. What they want to know is whether or not they need to screen for like testicular or ovarian cancer.
Right, which is an incredibly specific contextual conversation between that is private between a professional and the patient, as opposed to sitting at the bar being like, "Do I want to get laid tonight?" Like, it's not the same thing.
Nope. And also, if you want to get laid, asking people about their gonad cancer screening is probably a good way to not get laid.
I don't know. Have you tried it recently?
To be fair, I haven't. I better start asking people. It's like, so how are your gonads? They cancer free today?
Puck agrees.
Okay, thanks, Puck. Puck, who doesn't even have gonads. Aw, look at him. Hey there, Puck.
So it proves that they taste like turkey, not like chicken. But nonetheless, they actually believe that. They believe the dinosaurs evolved into birds. But there's a lot of problems with that, and we'll get into some of those.
Okay, yeah, what are they?
But one thing, I guess, you kind of got me going a little bit on the T-Rex exhibit that you saw. Well, in 2017, a group of evolutionary scientists proved conclusively by finding the skin of a T-Rex that T-Rexes did not have feathers.
Okay, well, first we're going to take a drink, because that is, that's quite a way
Let's
to
go.
reply to that, or to describe that find. So what was found? What was found was a handful of patches of skin impression from various parts of an adult T-Rex body. When he says they found a T-Rex skin, it sounds like what they found was like a shed snake skin, where they had this whole like body impression of T-Rex. That is absolutely not what happened. Instead, some patches, mostly from the underside of the T-Rex, as well as from parts of the leg, were found. And when I say some patches, I mean like a few square centimeters, right? Now think about how much skin a T-Rex would have had. A lot more than a few square centimeters times like 5 or whatever. And further, one of the problems was that this skin was actually all from places where we know dinosaurs are least likely to have feathers, including modern birds. Right? So,
Well, yeah, not all birds are completely covered in feathers, and not all, like, even chickens, like different variations of chickens have different amount of feathering and plumage, and like plumage in different places. Look at the difference between a vulture and a hawk. Look at the difference between a turkey or a turkey vulture and like your like day-to-day like roast chicken.
Yep. So we got a super chat for 200 Argentinian pesos from Glenn Hogan, full relation, who says, young Earth creationists could so easily say, look at these mythological dragons like Longs, Nidhogg, Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl. Yeah, there you go.
Quetzalcoatl.
Why would
I knew
ancient
that
peoples
one.
give them feathers if they didn't have feathered dinosaurs? I mean, yeah, there's another good point. There's a lot of mythical feathered dinosaurs or feathered other reptiles that they could just point at. And the thing is, they use dragon myths to say that there were late surviving theropods and other dinosaurs. But
oh yeah, there was a whole guy who was on his whole thing being like, this humans definitely saw a small baby T-Rex running across the street in North America in like the 1900s, and it's like, what? This is something the church I went to passed out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My mom found it. I need to send it to you.
You should, actually. That would be fun. So what does it mean if we find some small patches of T-Rex skin from places where T-Rex is probably least likely to have feathers? Well, it does not conclusively prove whether or not T-Rex had feathers overall, because remember one thing that she said was, Ivana said that she went to a museum and the juveniles had feathers. Were the skin impressions from an adult or a juvenile? Well, it turns out they were from an adult. One of the things that you might have noticed that happens with many animals is that their integument changes between the time when they are first born or hatched and they become an adult. Like, many birds are born completely naked and only grow feathers later. Like most parrots. You ever see a baby parrot or a parakeet or something? Mm-hmm. It hatches out and it doesn't have feathers. Then it starts to grow in little sheathed barbs along feather lines, and it slowly starts to fill in its plumage. Whereas look at a chicken. It hatches with feathery down. And then that is slowly replaced by pennaceous feathers. But also look
and it's
at,
all
say,
wet and sticky and gross looking.
Well, yeah, I mean, it just came out of an egg. But then look at, say, like elephants. Elephants are actually born with a pretty substantial coat of fur. Not as substantial as, say, like your cat or a chinchilla or something, but it's definitely more substantial than as an adult. And it's mostly lost as the animal grows. Also, look at humans. Humans are frequently born with what's called lanugo, which is a coat of hair that grows in utero and is usually absorbed sometime around birth, but not often before birth, which means it is not uncommon for humans to be born with essentially a coat of fur that they're going to lose by the time they're adults. In all cases, we have animals, both dinosaurs and not, that change the kinds of integumentary structures that they have as they grow up. So,
male patterned baldness.
there's that too. Integument changes over your life, right? Or look at beards, right? Most people aren't
Babies born with blue eyes.
Yeah, babies aren't born being able to grow beards, but a good number of babies who are born will later grow up to be able to grow beards.
What about a little bitty baby with his big sideburns?
Well, I mean, that might be a little bit different. Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith, who's been a member for 21 months and is at the tetrapod level, says, that cut at pup was very bad form.
Look at how sad he is now.
Yeah, I'm sure he's despondent.
Depression.
Oh no, poor pup.
Oh, he's so sad. He got the ball that you always wanted.
Oh, the poor guy. So does finding patches of skin without feathers from a T-Rex from the places where it's least likely to have feathers anyway, from an adult T-Rex in any way argue anything about whether or not juvenile T-Rexes would have had feathers? I would argue no,
or
it
that
doesn't.
there aren't different subspecies.
Well, there's that too. So yeah,
parts of the world.
nothing about this conclusively proved that T-Rex didn't have feathers. Now, I personally think it less likely that adult T-Rexes had feathers. I actually don't think they did. I would suggest to any paleo artist that I think the evidence is currently weighted a bit in favor of adult T-Rexes being featherless. Can't say that for juveniles. So
I still like the artist that did the big T-Rex. They put the skeleton and then they put a giant chick body, like a chicken chick around it, like the big round one. And I'm like, but what if they did look like that though?
We have good reasons to think they didn't, based on things like footprints and whatnot. But yeah, it would be funny.
Yeah, but it would be so funny.
However, they believe many of the other so-called meat-eating dinosaurs did have feathers, but they said, well,
There's just so-called meat-eating dinosaurs. Like, do you have any evidence to actually suggest that these dinosaurs weren't eating meat? Because we have actual tooth marks on bones from a T-Rex that was scraping flesh off with its teeth.
Yeah, they like to use this argument that like fruit bats have really long, sharp teeth. Or like they use the sharp teeth to pick the bark off to eat bugs. And it's like, what?
Savage, they're evolutionizing our kid's Cobra for $5. Says, according to Gish, Arizona cowboy saw a Quetzalcoatlus with long teeth, a long bony tail, and a bone directly connecting the wrist and the shoulder. Well, okay, so then it's not a Quetzalcoatlus because that is all a whole bunch of stuff that Quetzalcoatlus doesn't have. So that is. I'm just gonna take a drink for it. I don't even care.
I think there's actually like a regional variant as well. Like there's two versions of Quetzalcoatl. There's like the Mesopotamian one. I think
we're talking about the pterosaur, Quetzalcoatlus.
Yeah, and then there's like that's what I mean.
Well, I mean that's not like a regional variant. That's just an animal named after a god from the local area.
But in mythology,
I don't know if there's two. I don't know. There's probably different regional variations on the same god. Yeah.
I think there's another regional variant, like Pokemon.
Yeah. Gods are like Pokemon. You got to catch them all, and they have regional variants.
Yep. You got to travel if you want to get them.
Mm-hmm.
So you still do see, like you saw, we still see a lot of exhibits showing baby T-Rexes and adult T-Rexes with feathers still.
And again, with the adult T-Rexes, unless the feathers are in places where we know they definitely didn't have them, we can't actually say that's wrong. I think it's less likely. But we absolutely have no evidence against juvenile T-Rexes having feathers.
I'm confused by the expectation here. Is it like, what are they expecting exhibits to be? Because exhibits are a presentation of a collection of information.
They want them to only exhibit things that they think are true.
Okay, but you can exhibit something that's not 100% defined or correct as long as you're clear in what you're presenting, right?
No, if it disagrees with their interpretation of the Bible, you shouldn't be representing it at all.
Got it. Noted. So Ken Ham's thing can get tossed in the window, in the trash?
No, because
Because it presents things that not everybody in creationism agrees with.
But it agrees with their version of creationism, so they're okay with it. It's very specific. But then Reggio's just gifted 20 Dapper Dinosaur. Remember? My goodness.
Oh,
thank
damn.
you.
I'm just going to finish my drink. I'm going to need more tea.
Yeah, I'm going to finish what's in here, and then I'm going to pour the rest of what I have, and then I'll probably need a new drink. Actually, no, I think 20 drinks would probably be better in this case, because I just realized I have a lot.
Congratulations, everybody who just got your memberships. Hot damn. Welcome to the Power Hour.
Hey, I got to 10.
Ooh, that sounded rough.
It was a lot.
Got him.
I feel like my brain is getting a little bit of brain freeze because I got a bunch of ice in here to keep it nice and cold.
I feel like that's probably one of the best ways to get if you want to hashtag get them, you get Dapper by giving a large number of subscribers, or like one of those like longer super chats that has like too many like bags of dicks in it.
Glenn Hope in full relation for 200 Argentinian pesos says, Savage reminded me of my visit to the Meteorite Museum in Yucatan. Turns out Chicxulub, part of a larger municipality of Progreso, but thank God they picked Chicxulub. Sounds like an elder god killed a dinosaur. Yeah, it does. All right, so I just lost my train of thought. It doesn't matter. We're gonna hit play.
Secular science has even shown that that's not the case.
Okay, hey, ICR guys. This is the thing that comes up every single time I have to grab one of these podcasts. Level out your goddamn audio.
Yes.
Just take little snippets and normalize them. I don't know what it is. Like, do you have the microphone too far away from Timothy Clary? Like, get a freaking lapel mic or something.
This is really bad. This is really bad for a podcast.
Seriously.
Like, really bad. Like, unacceptable.
I can barely hear him. And I have him boosted in post for you guys.
Yep.
Just... And the thing is, like, look, you've got, like, a reasonably fancy camera setup. You're doing, like, pans and tilts and swinging the camera around, and you've got shot, reverse shot cameras already set up.
Shelves in the background on your set.
For some reason, like, you managed to hire a cinematographer who's, like, a pretty decent at cinematography.
Somebody's doing
like,
their job.
get an audio guy. Take some of that donation money and turn it into an audio guy. And just
Call
give the
me,
audio guy.
for
Yeah,
you.
Seriously. Give me a little bit of money and I'll equalize out your audio so that I can actually hear Timothy Clary. And it's not even a science thing. It's just like, guys, podcast looks great. It sounds terrible. Fix that.
Yeah, and that's really the wrong side of correct you want to be on a podcast.
Yeah, if you're doing a podcast, yeah, you should emphasize audio and like just to have a static camera shot because the camera is all just extra.
Mm-hmm.
But they do believe that many other dinosaurs did have feathers, and I do disagree with that. And
I mean, okay, but here's the thing. When someone says, hey, I think this dinosaur had feathers, and then they present you with the physical evidence of feathers, that's believing they have feathers in the same way that they believe they had toes. Right? Like, why do we think dinosaurs had toes? Well, we have fossil toes attached to dinosaurs. Why do we think dinosaurs had feathers? Well, because of the fossil feathers attached to the dinosaurs.
Oh, brother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Well,
explain
thank
a little
you.
bit.
So the idea of feathers had to come from somewhere. So could you explain where that
The
idea started
idea
from?
of feathers had to come from somewhere.
One day,
That needs to be, I want that on a mug. The idea of feathers had to come from
a
somewhere.
weird way to phrase it. Roshan, a
It's
pre-Yiddish
so-
math tutor, Keller, for $4.99 said, what's the secular sciences? Also, I just woke up. Guten Morgen, everyone. Well, Guten Morgen to you too.
Hello.
Secular science is just science. Because here's the thing, right? In this context, secular just means not explicitly associated with any particular religious organization or group. Now, that's not the only definition for secular. For instance, like, the Catholic Church has secular priests. I'm pretty sure they're affiliated with a particular religious group because they're Catholic priests. But, so yeah, secular has more than one meaning. But in this context, that's essentially what it means. But here's the thing, though. That's just science. Science is not in the business of promoting or denigrating particular religious groups. It is in the business of finding out natural explanations for natural phenomena that we encounter in the world. And also, as a corollary, predicting future phenomena on the basis of scientific theories and laws and whatnot.
Yeah.
That is not unique to Christianity. It's not unique to Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, Hinduism, any of these things. I will stop listing off religions now. Although, just to help out, round out the the group of Abrahamic religions, we'll add in the Druze. You can be a Druze scientist too, but not a Rastafarian. Get out of here. No, I'm kidding. You can be a Rastafarian. That's also fine. And so, basically, what they mean is science that is actually science instead of pseudoscience that starts with conclusions based on their reading of the Bible. Because one of the key aspects that's different between science and pseudoscience is pseudoscience tends to start with a conclusion and then hunt for evidence. Science starts with evidence and then tries out different conclusions to see which ones actually best fit the data. So, with creation science, they are starting with dogmatic beliefs about their interpretation of the primeval history of Genesis, which is basically Genesis 1 through 11. And they are using those to inform them of the allowable scientific conclusions they can come to. They're not allowed to find that there is no flood, or that universal common ancestry is true, or that the world is more than, about 10,000 years old at the oldest, if you go with, like, the Septuagint chronology.
It's trying to put science into a box that science doesn't belong in.
Right. And so when they say secular science, they just mean science that is not beholden to their pseudoscientific conclusions.
It's like most language or most groups that are looking to control something will make attempts to box things in to boxes that they don't fit into. Or like there are things that are obviously outside of the box, but we're just going to pretend those things don't exist. Tends to be what happens.
Oh, and
which can be very dangerous.
I have been reminded, I do want to wish everyone who is observing a productive fast here on this Yom Kippur, because it is Yom Kippur for me for I think another 6-ish hours. So I'm not actually observing Yom Kippur, I'm just saying it will be Yom Kippur here for about 6-ish more hours.
I was gonna say, do mojitos count?
Yeah, look, if I were observing Yom Kippur, I would not be drinking a mojito. I might be drinking water.
Sure.
Because, one of the rules for fasting in every religion I've encountered that has fasting rules is like, hey, be healthy with this. Don't
still drink water, yeah.
Drink some water if you need to. If you're are ill or elderly or very, very young, or you've got diabetes or whatever, do what you need to be okay. And don't. The
intentionality is there. It's already if you have to
right. Yeah, we're not asking. This fasting period is not asking you to jeopardize your health. It's supposed to be a spiritual practice, not you need to go to the hospital practice. So. I hope everyone, again, has a wonderful and productive fast if you were observing Yom Kippur. So then, Cross-Platform Adventurers, who's been a member for 18 months and is at the Amniote level, says, we recently found the Chicxulub impact was not alone. The Nadir crater offshore of Western Africa was also formed around the KPG extinction. Yes, I did read about that. I'm withholding much commentary until more research is done there, because I don't want to... I don't want to take a position on something that I do not currently know enough about. But Reggio's also just gifted 50 memberships, which means Vince gets free pizza, and we're already building our way towards Dapper wears a tutu on the next Kent event. So thank you. I'm going to try to finish this. Chesh, if you want to entertain people for a little while, I'm going to finish this drink here.
So I have an idea that you guys might be interested in. I don't know. I pitched it to Dapper and the people on the Lexington, which you should totally go and check out, which is on Top Hat Software, where we play a Star Trek TTRPG. But of course, if you leave things to me, I'm going to immediately start talking about TTRPGs. I have this idea where basically people send me their information and an audio of them reading their characters, whether it's an NPC character or whether it's a player character or a little bit of lore. And then I do a painting. I record the painting, speed it up, and put the audio over top. What do you guys think of that idea? Let me know. I think it's a great idea. I love it.
Idea. I, however, am going to very quickly go grab myself a beverage, which means what we're going to actually do is we're going to show the coming soon or next time on Star Trek Lexington while I go do that, because I just finished my drink.
You should read Sean's super chat before we go.
Yes, Sean, who says, for $5, Fasting should bring you closer to God, not take you to meet him with a Godzilla, and I will take a drink for the Godzilla when we get back. And no, I mean, I agree. That is... Look, as someone who has
I think it's a really funny way to word it.
someone who has spent a not inconsiderable amount of time doing fasts for various reasons,
Yeah.
And also, here's another thing that I once got as some advice on fasting. If you're doing a fast as a group, like your church or your synagogue or whatever, or it's like Ramadan or something, don't pay attention to what other people are eating. It's not your business.
Oh.
Pay attention to what you're eating. And if someone else is doing something you wouldn't do, that's not your business. That's between them and any higher power and maybe any spiritual father or mother or something that they might have. It is not a matter for you. So, there you go. So we are going to watch the...
check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yeah, we're going to watch the next time on Star Trek Lexington while I grab myself a fresh mojito. So I'll be right back. Next time on Star Trek Lexington.
Chief Science Officer Lanford Personal Log, Stardate 5596.5. We've had a fair few missions so far on this exploration trip, but not so many new scientific discoveries. I'm very excited that the Lexington has picked up a temporal anomaly along long-range scanners. We are currently on way to investigate it. Medical supply runs and archaeological supply runs are important, but I'm here to discover the mysteries of the universe.
It's not just the Lexington that has discovered the anomaly. An adversary of the Federation has also taken an interest, and they are none too keen on dealing with Federation interference. However, the anomaly may be more dangerous than either side knows, and it threatens the integrity of the timeline. Can the two forces overcome their differences and protect all of reality? Or will their rivalry doom their universe? All right, well, I am back. Chesh seems not to be. So, oh, you are here? All right, well, first, let's... Ooh, nice. I'm going to take a drink for that from Sean, so thank you very much. And let's open up this. So, I hope that everyone enjoyed the next time on Star Trek Lexington. I actually just finished it like an hour before we went live. So, yeah. Also, you were muted when you said I'm here, so I'll take a drink for Dapper as a professional. All right, here we go.
Evolutionists?
Well, what they started finding, I believe, is kind of what they try to call proto-feathers. And so you have to go from scales to feathers somehow to go from, like a rep.
Okay, I keep saying this a lot. And I mean, I guess creationists aren't watching, so I guess I get why they don't ever update it. But scales and feathers are homologous. They're not one that evolved into the other. So I just keep that in mind. They both descend from a placode, which is a lot like a scale. It's probably more like a scale than it is like a feather. But placodes are the integumentary structure that gave rise to hair and feathers and scales. And yes, if you just saw an adult animal with a bunch of placodes on its skin, you would probably call them scales. But they're not scales in the sense of reptile scales that you would see on a lizard or a snake. Well, snakes are lizards, but you get what I mean. On a tuatara or a lizard, because tuataras aren't lizards, while snakes are. So take that, phylogeny. Also, 30 to 50 Annoying Feral Peccaries newsletters, which is the name I love, by the way, says, let's see... Dapper and Vishanti and Murphy emojis. It's cold outside, duet in Klingon with a Ghidorah emoji.
That sounds so cursed.
That does sound cursed.
I'm in.
Well, there's also the weird thing where, like, do we translate it directly, or do we, like, adapt it closer to, like, a Klingon social thing? Because the thing is, Baby It's Cold Outside is a song that is very, very much tied to its setting and time frame. Because it's not easy to get this if all you're aware of is, like, current year. But what's actually happening is it's a guy who's inviting a woman to stay with him on a winter day to bang, and she is pretending to not want to. That is the context. She is pretending in an effort to maintain her quote-unquote dignity. because a good girl like her
Right.
is expected to not want to do this. And so she is coming up with an excuse as to why she shouldn't. And he's trying to come up with excuses as to why she should. So that
They're playing a game.
Yeah, basically. They both actually want to hang out and bang is the context of the song. But because of the social mores, she is expected to try to offer resistance. And so she is performatively offering resistance. But that's not really a thing for Klingons. So
Yeah, I don't know
if a Klingon woman actually does want to stay at some guy's home and bang him, she's probably just going to throw something at him and then jump at him while making growling noises. And if he breaks a bone,
That's what I do.
all the better. There's at least one scene where after Jadzia, Dax, and Worf get married, where Jadzia is in sickbay and getting a bone break treated, and Dr. Bashir is like, again? And she's like, what? Worf is rough and bad. And it's like, okay, that's pretty rough.
That's real rough, guys. I don't know about this.
All right, here we go.
I feel like that would kill the mood for most people.
Apparently not for Jadzia.
Well, maybe it did, and that's why she's there.
I mean, okay, maybe.
You've got to somehow evolve these feathers. And so what they started seeing maybe 20 years ago or so, these little hair-like structures coming off the dinosaur skin, they started getting better preservation. They had opened up these things like a dinosaur called Sinosauropteryx. Sinosauropteryx.
Say that
Sinosauropteryx, for those of you who can't tell or can't hear.
5 times.
I had to say it right the second time to get it right. Sinosauropteryx. Anyway, but it had these little hair-like wispy things coming off, almost like hair.
And is this on the fossil?
It's on the fossil.
Okay.
Kind of coming off with this.
So far, he is correct. Sinosauropteryx is an animal that has been found with integumentary structures preserved in a very noticeable feathery pattern. So, Eruption of Yiddish math tutor Keller for $1.99 says, "There's no tsundere Klingons, only yandere."
Only yandere?
Yes, essentially.
I mean,
more or less what is correct.
so maybe like the yandere is the more common, and then once in a while there's a tsundere, but the tsundere is actually to Klingons feels more like the shy girl, bashful girl that like never comes forward.
You know,
Can we get like a rom-com harem Klingon anime?
yes, we need that. So as it turns out, there's a surprising amount about Klingon like marriage and sex life that has become canon over time.
Good.
And also
Good
divorce,
world building.
because we saw Quark get a Klingon divorce in Deep Space Nine. So after he was forcibly married to a woman named
Well,
Rilke, she then
you
later
know.
divorced him. So yeah, yep. But to be fair, he
That's
was
his life.
while they were married, he did exactly what was expected of him, which was to clear her name and find that her rival house was actually doing all sorts of nasty Ferengi type trickery to help suppress her financially. But they were doing all sorts of financial fraud, and of course, who better to uncover financial fraud than a Ferengi?
Yeah, what is this Ferengi trickery you're talking about? It seems like racism is pretty strong in Star Trek. I don't know.
I mean, go watch the last episode of Star Trek Lexington for some Star Trek racism. It turns out not all Orions are part of the Orion Syndicate, even if it seems like the one in last week's episode definitely was.
I wouldn't know. I'm just the doctor.
Where the skin would have been. So they see the bones, they see these little hair-like structures. They're, they kind of look more like hair. So they believe what they call those proto-feathers, which is the pre-feather. They aren't true feathers. They're just more like hair-looking things. However, they think that, that's the start of it. That's their proof.
Okay, first I want to say it's not supposed to be the start of it in terms of Sinosauropteryx. Because Sinosauropteryx post-dates many animals that are much more bird-like than Sinosauropteryx. What it is it's transitional, and transitional forms do not need to come in some kind of strict chronological order, because more basal anatomies can persist along with more derived anatomies in other organisms. So, creationists often will complain that many of the very bird-like dinosaurs that we find in places like China post-date our earliest, even more bird-like dinosaurs in, like, say, Germany. Which is true, but in order for that to be a problem for evolution, you would have to assume that basal anatomy can't coexist with derived anatomy, which we just know is untrue just from looking around the real world today.
This is so bizarre to me because, like, again, we're working on such like a small sample size of like comparatively. So if we say, for example, if you were to look at a human skeleton, you would assume that humans had eyes and would assume that humans could see. And then, while also studying archaeology, you would find Braille and be like, well, what the fuck is this for?
Oh, there it is. There's our first F-bomb. We don't
Eh.
get another one after this. That's it. Savage, they're evolutionizing our kids Cobra for $1.99 says, the rival being Dagor, son of whatever. Yes, that is actually a line from Quark, who's like, Dagor, son of whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah. And that's the episode where, technically, Quark wins a Batleth duel.
Yay!
Not by fighting with the Batleth, but by being so extra pathetic that it seems dishonorable to kill him. Which works!
Well, hey, listen, Ferengi tricks.
Look, Deep Space Nine has some great episodes about both Klingons and Ferengi, and in this case, both of them at the same time. Because usually the Klingon episodes are separate from the Ferengi episodes, but in this case, nope, they're combined, and it's great, and I'm totally here for it. And I hope that Grilka and Quark stayed friends and kept in touch, and that he's invited every once in a while for like house reunions. That's my hope.
That would be sweet.
It would be.
Hey, sometimes you gotta get married to help a friend out.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you do. I've definitely known people who've done that.
There's enough rom-com, schlocky manga, animes, and romantic novels about people getting forcibly married and then just slowly over time developing friendships into feelings. So maybe they got married again.
I mean, she wasn't around when the crew of the Cerritos went back to Deep Space Nine, but who knows? Maybe she was there in the background.
But there was a scientist in 2005.
2005, okay.
Said, let's look at this. And
Hey, I'm going to give everyone in chat a little bit of a chance. Who do you think this scientist is who's trying to say that the integumentary structures of Sinosauropteryx are actually not what everyone else thinks they are? And it actually shows that there's no connection at all between birds and dinosaurs. I'm going to give you like one try and see if you can figure out which scientist he's referencing, but not naming.
Does the first try not count?
Yeah, basically.
Took a dolphin, which doesn't have a lot of hair. You know, the mammal has some hair. Yeah. And he squished a piece of a dolphin under a bunch of sediment. And then he looked at what happened, flattened it out, and he saw these hair-like structures coming off. And what it was is just the collagen in the skin, which kind of leaches off, kind of bleeds off to the edges. Once you squish an animal down with the skin, the collagen fibers are very durable.
Okay, so we've got Fiducia, the band member. Yeah, look at that. It's like you guys know what's going on. Okay, a couple super chats. 30 to 50 annoying feral peccaries newsletters for $5 says Cisco. Jadzia may be easier on the eyes, but Curzon was a targ in the sack with the Godzilla. I mean, based on the stories that Cisco told about Curzon, that does seem to be true. Here's a drink for it.
Tracks.
Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith for $5 says, to be fair, what do you think would normally happen when a Klingon meets a Ferengi? I guess it depends on the context. I mean, if a Klingon's going to walk into like the Ferengi's bar, I expect the Klingon to just order a drink.
A Klingon walk into a Ferengi bar.
What? It happens. It happens in Deep Space Nine. And what the Klingons do is mostly order drinks.
Is, write me the Dojin.
There you go. So like if it's like in the middle of space, I guess it's going to depend. Like, is the Ferengi trespassing in the Klingon Empire without permission or something? I don't know. It varies.
They meet on a planet where they all go for vacation for the beach episode? I don't know.
It's like Risa. They're probably just going to ignore each other. They're both doing their own thing separately.
They secretly meet up behind the stalls when nobody's looking.
So yeah, it turns out you guys are right. It was indeed Fiducia. It was Alan Fiducia and his buddies, the band team, like Liam Soliar and whatnot. So here's something. Collagen is a protein that your cells produce. Proteins are... Help me out, Chesh. Are proteins the same thing as cells?
I don't think so.
Okay. And cells have
I might be wrong about
right?
that.
Cells are a thing with organelles. Yeah.
Yeah.
The proteins, which aren't cells, have organelles.
No?
No, correct. They do not. So if you found remnants of organelles...
Don't quiz. I don't come
On
here
a-
to be quizzed. I come here to drop an F-bomb.
So if you found organelles in a structure that you were claiming was actually just a protein, would that be very good evidence that it's not just a protein and that there's actually more going on there?
Sussy, bro.
Yeah. So here's the thing with Sinosauropteryx prima in particular. You don't even need a scanning electron microscope to notice that the explanation of collagen fibers can't be correct, because the melanosomes, which are the organelles that produce or that contain melanin that give cells their, your integumentary skill, your skin and your hair, their color, those were so well preserved and so numerous in the Sinosauropteryx prima holotype that we could tell just by eyeballing the fossil what color the damn animal was, and that it had little stripes on its tail, which is adorable, by the way. So, did Alan Fiducia disprove that these were actually protofeathers? No. In fact, we have conclusive evidence that they're something other than that, and that they're actual integumentary structures, which contain melanosomes, thereby being colored in a way that you can't do with collagen fibers. So I'm going to take a drink for Timothy Clary, just not doing any research on this, like his buddy Alan Fiducia.
Well, he's
Also-
just a geologist. He wouldn't know anything about this.
Right. But also, when you cite Alan Fiducia, all you're doing is citing someone who says, well, birds aren't dinosaurs, but they're just a different kind of archosaur, which doesn't help creationism any anyway. So, like...
So they're cherry picking their own guy now?
Basically, yeah. And actually,
Okay.
Alan Fiducia has complained about that. He's published complaints about, I wish creationists would stop using my work to pretend that I support them, because I absolutely don't, and nothing that I write will ever support creationism. I'm a firm believer in like the theory of evolution. Now, of course, I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me. But
Yeah.
he's on record as saying, please stop creationists. I'm not on your side.
Well,
Nothing
he's
I
not
say
the
supports
only
you.
one, right? Didn't
yeah,
the woman with the veins do the same thing?
Yeah, so that is Dr. Schweitzer. She's also done the same thing.
Yes.
And also Stephen Jay Gould also did the same thing before he passed away.
What is it with these people like misrepresenting and like for all intensive purposes slandering these scientists to the point of harassment where they need to put out a statement about it? Like, what is going on?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a like, you do you think you're the bad? Do you think we're the baddies at some point? Like, do you think maybe
Yeah, so by the way, I'm taking a drink
lying
for how
about
bad
people
it
is
is.
against the rules in the
Yeah.
Bible?
I'm taking a drink for badly misrepresenting both Sinosauropteryx as well as Alan Fiducia. Let's see. Savage, they're evolutionizing our kid's Cobra for $5 says, there's a bathroom on Risa that has call this number for Jamaharon graffitied on the stall. And also, I did earlier mess up the fundraiser thing by putting in the wrong number, so I'm going to take a drink for Dapper's professional there. I put a 4 instead of a 7 and it messed it up for just a fraction of a second.
Hey, Lamau.
Besides, you don't need to go to the bathroom to get Jamaharon. You just display a Horgan. Which, by the way, I looked into that. Like, what does it cost to get a replica Horgan? And, like, the replica Horgan is super expensive. I'm thinking about
really?
3D printing my own Horgan.
3D, yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna 3D model.
Yeah, and then I can get my
Dapper.
own Jamaharon.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
It's still kind of on topic. Do you make your models, your 3D printed maps available on your Patreon?
My 3D printed maps?
Yeah, like the map, like the data. I mean, so
Like
like you
STL
made
files?
those dice. Yeah. Like you made
no,
the
those,
dice.
yeah, the dice that I printed for Star Trek Adventures are actually available as STL files on my Patreon, as are, I have a threat and momentum counter that uses, like, 2 little holes that you can put tokens on, because they have a little hollow part, you can slide them on. Keep track of that. If you want to do it that way, that's also an STL file that's available on my Patreon. Yep.
Well,
So,
there you go. If you want whatever Dapper's gonna scheme up next,
yeah, go check out the Patreon.
go check out the Patreon.
Speaking of that, though, I think it is time for our actual normal break. Although, here's the other thing. I actually don't feel like I need one yet, because I just had one, and I went and grabbed a whole new drink. So we're going to push through just a little bit. Although, hold on. Let's double check with Doc. Doc, if you're still here, let me know. And if you do want to come on, we can take a quick break, get you in here, And because it'll require me to like end this call with Chesh, start a different call with you and her, share the video, arrange you both into the set. So it takes a
You're
whole
stuck
lot.
dealing with me then.
Yeah. So, all right, here we go.
I'll have your Discord details. Ooh.
Just like our skin, what makes leather. And so they appear to be little hair-like structures. So
He's inaudible audio, guys. You're doing an audio podcast. Boost his freaking levels.
what he said, what they're really seeing is just collagen from the skin of the dinosaur. It has nothing to do with feathers, what was actually growing as, some sort of a proto-feather or anything like that.
Yeah, that is what Alan Fiducia said. And what was the actual consensus in the scientific community? What did other people say in response to this? Oh, right. They pointed out that Alan Fiducia is obviously wrong and doesn't know what he's talking about because of things like melanosomes, as well as the fact that other examples of what he called collagen fibers in other fossils, while trying to back up his idea, were actually tool marks. And the reason we know that they're tool marks is because the fossil preparators came out and said, no, that's just my drill. I remember specifically making these drill marks.
Did he ever retract this idea?
Not that I'm aware of. As far as I know, he still thinks that he has a good argument with the collagen fibers.
Then he is a fool.
Yeah, I mean, Alan Fiducia has a well-deserved
if he just had an idea that he was like, he saw a thing and was like, hey, here's an idea for what this thing might be, and everybody went, probably not, and also no, and he went, oh yeah, never mind. Like the alpha wolf guy. The alpha wolf guy was like, hey, here's an idea for this behavior that I think I'm observing, and then later on was like, no, actually, never mind. That would be fine, but no, he gotta be a waffle about it.
Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take an intermission, kind of, and we're going to bring Doc Dino in. We're going to set all that up so that it's less disruptive because it'll be over the intermission, and then we will come back hopefully very, very soon. So,
I'm getting changed. I'm getting blasted by the sun.
Yeah, you kind of clip when you do that. It's yeah. All right, so here's the intermission, everybody. We'll be right back with an extra guest. Next time on Star Trek Lexington.
Chief Science Officer Lanford Personal Log, Stardate 5596.5. We've had a fair few missions so far on this exploration trip, but not so many new scientific discoveries. I'm very excited that the Lexington has picked up a temporal anomaly along long-range scanners. We are currently on way to investigate it. Medical supply runs and archaeological supply runs are important, but I'm here to discover the mysteries of the universe.
It's not just the Lexington that has discovered the anomaly. An adversary of the Federation has also taken an interest, and they are none too keen on dealing with Federation interference. However, the anomaly may be more dangerous than either side knows, and it threatens the integrity of the timeline. Can the two forces overcome their differences and protect all of reality? Or will their rivalry doom their universe?
Okay, we are back, and I have another guest, but he's not on camera, so I didn't put him up there. But Doc Dino is here. Say hello, Doc.
Hello.
Hello. All right, so Trixie, are you registered to vote? Check now, Purple. Which actually, in this case, it's at least here in Arizona, it's too late. So double check your laws locally. It might not. You might still be able to register to vote in time for this election. I don't actually know. Says official request for Dapper or Clay Dapper STL. Yeah, I could make it Clay Dapper STL. I would have to do a little bit of work to prepare the model for an STL, because preparing it to animate is not the same thing as preparing it to print. So it is not currently a printable model, but it could be very shortly. So
Ooh.
yeah, I could make that happen. And that was for $2. And there was a Mothra, so we're gonna drink for the Mothra emoji.
How's that?
And we'll update the fundraising thing, because hey, who knows? Maybe we could get that thing to Dapper Tutu. And I would have to shove myself into my stupid human costume and put on a tutu.
And then into a stupid tutu.
Yeah. Yeah, as if the human costume isn't itchy enough already. Alright, here we go. Doc, oh, sorry. Say hi, it's Doc. Let people know who you are, where to find you, that stuff.
Sure. Howdy, howdy. I'm Dr. Dino, or Doc for short. I am a paleontologist currently doing field work out in the Badlands of Wyoming.
Awesome.
And I've been finding a lot of dinosaurs.
Nice.
No feathers yet. I did, however, find some dinosaur bones with teeth marks on them, which kind of interesting that they claim they don't eat meat.
Yeah, well.
They just eat the bones.
Yeah, just the
just eating deer, eating a snake once in a while, eating some bones. You know.
I mean, that is a thing. If you think that an animal is an herbivore, it's probably something that eats meat at least occasionally.
Yep.
True.
Usually have to.
But yet that's ignored.
Who knows? Maybe they're like
Here's
porcupines.
an executive scientist doing this really good research, experimental research, and he gets.
Here's the thing: Alan Fiducia isn't ignored, and specifically, it's because he can actually do well enough to get into real peer-reviewed journals. He's not ignored; he's rebutted. And there's a difference. You guys are ignored because, by and large, you do not bother to publish in real journals. You just publish locally in your LARP journals that are basically just blogs with strict formatting requirements.
It depends on what you mean by ignored either. They have a podcast.
Well, there's certainly... The scientific community is not going to respond to this podcast in the form of a paper.
Well, yeah, but there's nothing for them to respond to.
Yeah, exactly. Alan Fiducia produces work that is worth responding to and able to be responded to in the literature. No one's going to publish a paper about ICR's podcast.
You're gonna if you can't get above my level, the scientific community is not gonna bother with you.
Nor should they.
Correct. Yeah. Don't come down to my level. You guys don't belong here.
I mean, they actually
and to be fair, also even with Alan Fiducia, I've read some of his work. He's a decent ornithologist, but for some reason, whenever he talks about dinosaurs, he kind of craps the bed.
He's just stuck. Poor guy.
Yeah, he does. I've read some of his papers too. I actually did think he did a reasonably good job in his argument that based on claw morphology, Archaeopteryx was not adapted to a highly cursorial life, like strategy. I actually do think that one was actually a pretty good idea. But the thing is that in an example of him not really being ignored, the consensus has shifted away from Archaeopteryx being primarily cursorial and towards it being at least semi-arboreal. Which means that when Alan Fiducia actually makes a good argument and comes out with a paper that actually does a pretty good job of demonstrating why we should change our mind about something, scientists listen. They've actually come closer to his position on that.
At least put in an effort, right? Like these guys aren't actually doing anything. Or back to this thing that people in society has with social media, where it's like you feel like you're doing something when you're doing a podcast or a video stream like this because people are responding to it as opposed to actually doing something. At least what Dapper and the doctor here do is educate people. There's a value to it regardless, right? So if you're sitting here doing your podcast and you're not only are you not educating people, but you're also going out of your way to lie to people and then complain that scientists don't give a crap about what you have to say, like you're kind of like eating it at that point, right? Like, come on. Let's
Sean,
be real.
for $5, says the teeth marks are on the bones because T-Rex was trying to carry the other dino to safety in the flood with the sarcasm tag.
Well, here's the fun thing. The teeth marks I found are probably from Deinonychus, my namesake.
Nice. We're going to hit play.
It's ignored, so they still insist that because they are convinced that dinosaurs turned into birds.
And notice at no point is he going to mention the melanosomes that are so prominent you can see them with the naked eye in Sinosauropteryx. Not going to mention that.
The word convinced is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence.
But they're convinced by this thing called overwhelming physical evidence.
If you want to learn a little bit more about why that word is doing so much lifting in this particular podcast, come over and check out my philosophy show that we do once a month now, because we're soon going to be talking about what the difference is between, like, what does it mean to be certain about something, and like what do these words mean, and what does that mean to like your belief system and things like that.
That sounds fun.
It's gonna
Dapper,
be a good time. You'd be surprised.
Yes.
I promise.
May I correct you on something you said earlier? You can't really see the original colors on Sinosauropteryx on the fossil. You need to see the melanosomes to see the original colors, but you can see the patterns on the fossil.
Yeah, that is a better way to put that. Yeah, you can tell what the pattern is. Can't technically see the actual literal original color. That is fair.
And I love that it looks like a little red panda.
Mm-hmm. Very adorable.
Wholesome.
Even has the little bandit mask.
These are proto feathers, regardless of the science, and so
it's not oh my god, I'm going to take a drink. It's exactly because of the science. You can't just quote one Alan Fiducia paper and say, well, that's the science because it got published by Alan Fiducia, as if no one has ever responded to Alan Fiducia, as if people have not actually taken a look at his various arguments and come around on some of them and rejected the others because they don't actually hold water. Here's the thing. Having a peer-reviewed published paper that supports your claim is the bare minimum of having a claim that's worth taking a look at in science. It doesn't mean you're right. When people who are in like skeptic groups or scientifically minded groups like we have here are saying, okay, do you have any actual peer-reviewed evidence for this? We're asking you to get through the first hurdle, not the last hurdle.
Well, and keep in mind that there's a difference between skepticism and denialism. What these people are doing is just denial. They're just denying the things that exist. And like you'll see skeptics do the same thing. You'll see skeptics groups that are not creationists doing the same thing, right? Where it's just like you're not actually engaging in the conversation. You're simply just being like, but nah. And it's like, well, why do you want anybody to take you seriously? What for?
They kind of contradict themselves. So there's even a dinosaur paleontologist, or a bird paleontologist who did this research. He's a bird expert, studies fossil birds.
Why won't you say his name? They used to say Alan Fiducia. Why don't they say it anymore? Because the thing is, I recognize these as Fiducia papers, right? Like I've read these particular papers that he's talking about. Why won't they say his name anymore?
What, you said that this was 2005?
I think the Fiducia paper was like 2005, 2006 or something like that.
And when did this podcast happen?
I think at most about a year ago.
So when did he denounce their nonsense?
Who's he and who's they?
Fiducia?
Oh, he complained about their nonsense. I mean, I don't know exactly, but it was long before this podcast.
And they were still using his name after that for a while, I assume.
Yeah, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it might be one shred of decency, but I guess not.
Maybe they're avoiding it now just because if you search Alan Fiducia feathers, most of what you find is just going to be people debunking his stuff on Sinosauropteryx.
Yeah, I think that's the actual reason. I think that's
search engine optimization.
Yep. Yeah, I strongly suspect that that's the reason. Right,
I heard that's how you get your YouTube channel stolen.
He's an evolutionist. He did this research, and he's frustrated because nobody listens to him.
No, he's not frustrated because no one listens to him. He's frustrated because none of them actually agree with him. And there's a difference. Because people write papers rebutting Alan Fiducia. They don't ignore him. They rebut him. And again, there is a difference. They ignore you, Timothy Clary, because you're not publishing any of these papers. If you were to publish a paper about birds not being dinosaurs and actual protofeathers being like collagen fibers, if you could actually get a paper that was good enough to get peer reviewed, it would be reviewed and it would be rebutted in the literature. It wouldn't be ignored.
Tell me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like what you're telling me is that they're not putting there's nothing to be ignored in the first place.
From the creationists, yeah, that's by and large true.
From the creationists, yeah.
Yeah. The creationists don't. The thing is, look, if you want to engage in a scientific discussion with the scientist in the field, you need to publish in the places where they're reading for information in their field. Right? It's just like if you wanted to, I don't know, like be involved in picking the next Oscar winners, you can't do it from your blog. You're going to actually have to interact with people who get to vote on the Oscars.
Right.
And you're going to, by that, you're going to have to go to places where they go, and you're going to have to find a way into the circle of those people. Now, in science, there's a very obvious way to do that. It's called the literature. You need to be able to publish and get past peer review. And here's the thing. If your paper is so obviously flawed that it can't get past peer review, well, you're not ready to have the discussion with the big boys.
Yeah, there's nothing. We're back to there's not anything to actually ignore in the first place.
Savage,
speaking of peer review... Oh, sorry, you first.
Savage, they're evolutionizing our kid's Cobra for $5 says, why are we asking a geologist about this when they have a credentialed paleontologist on staff? And I will tell you why.
Gee, I don't know.
It is a common thing with creationists that they will bring on just about anyone except the person that you would think they should bring on. Now, I will also say that my most recent video up on Early Access, as well as the one that I am hoping to still get out by the end of today, both do in fact involve Brian Thomas, who is a paleobiochemist, talking about transitional fossils. So they do occasionally drag Brian Thomas out of hibernation to talk about paleontology.
Drag him up from the dungeons.
Yeah, basically. But by and large, creationists have a strong tendency to just grab anyone with enough letters after their name, like PhD or something, and just stick them in front of a camera to talk about anything. Because really, the only reason they bother with getting PhDs in the first place is because they want to set up in their audiences an appeal to authority. Because Timothy Clary knows more than me. He's got a PhD. The fact is that that's not what a PhD means. A PhD does not mean that you know more, that they know more than you, unless it's in the topic in which they had their PhD. And even then, having a PhD doesn't mean you're right even about the topic that you have your PhD in, because many people with doctorate degrees are absolute cranks even in the field they're supposed to be experts on. Because it turns out that what a PhD means is you are capable of doing the work to get a PhD. It doesn't mean that you're actually going to be right about things in the future. It doesn't mean you're not going to end up falling into pseudoscience nonsense. It doesn't mean you're an upstanding individual. It doesn't mean you're honest. It just means
that's why
you did the work.
Ethics board exists. That's why there are things like ethics boards when it comes to like medicine, medical research. That's why there are ethic boards for like psychology, and why Jordan Peterson is in so much trouble all the time, because he is not following, because it's not only is it not just about the science, it's about how you treat people. And the creationists have this really bad habit of treating people poorly, including the scientists that they cite and including the scientists that they bring on. Like, do you really think it's it's good for this guy's career or a good move for this guy to be sitting here doing this podcast about this topic when he could be doing a topic about something he knows about and actually say something feasible and viable? And maybe if he wasn't caught up in whatever garbage they're spewing right now or trying to get him to do, and admittedly wrong of him for be taking the money to talk on a topic he knows he doesn't know dick about, but also that he could be actually making some kind of scientific, because they value it so much, right? Some kind of contribution.
Well,
to
they
his
value the
instead.
appearance of it. That's the thing.
That's what I mean, right?
Yeah. The thing
exactly.
is, creationism is primarily a show, right? It is a show designed to keep people who are already in this particular version of Christianity in that particular version of Christianity. It is not even an outreach thing, right? Like, people aren't, by and large, converting to Christianity as a result of creation science, right?
It's got a very thin veneer of, like, you can use this to talk to other people. We're not going to have those conversations with those other people, though, ever.
You know, I would be curious,
because they ignore us.
If you're a creationist and you have managed to get this far into this video, first, thank you. I appreciate that. Welcome. I hope you're not feeling too alienated. My vitriol is not directed directly at you, unless you are, in fact, a PhD who is lying about their field, which I'm assuming you're not. But what I would like to say is, if you have actually found that you have had success converting people to your version of Christianity with this, whether it be from non-Christians or just other versions of Christianity, or even just aligning their theology on the matter of origins without actually joining your denomination or whatever. Like if you manage to convince some like Catholics or Orthodox Christians to stay Catholic or Orthodox, but become young Earth creationist Catholics or Orthodox, please let me know. I would be very fascinated to know how that works and to talk to you, not to criticize you, not to like, debunk you, but just to find out, is that actually an effective tactic? Because from what I can tell, it doesn't seem to be. But if your experience has been different and you're actually a creationist who's been using this for like outreach or evangelism or something, I would be fascinated to know. Pantalia 1998 for $5 says, well, all science is the same to young Earth creationists. For example, you can't explain evolution unless you talk about origin of life and Big Bang stuff too, with a Mothra. And yeah, there is that. They do like to conflate all sorts of different areas of science.
The amount of like crosstalk and cross-pollination as a way of, instead of bridging these gaps between obviously connected fields versus actually just non sequitur hopping from one to the other, drives me crazy.
Yeah. Alex Markle says, that feeling when a podcaster is even more morally bankrupt than Joe Rogan. The thing about Joe Rogan is that I genuinely think he's an idiot, and I don't think he actually knows better. Like, I think he actually takes some of this nonsense seriously, right? Because
from my understanding, he's taken a lot of hits to the head.
Well, there's that. Yeah, he has taken a lot of hits to the head. And he's been doing some of the dangerous nonsense pseudoscience stuff to himself.
Yeah.
So I think that in a way that I don't think Clary is an idiot. I think Joe Rogan is an idiot.
At least Joe Rogan makes bank doing it, too.
So that is where I think the moral difference lies. Is I don't think Joe Rogan could know better. Because I think he is just a profoundly stupid individual. Like, he is not a smart man.
Yeah, but I think there's so I agree, and I think that there is a question to be had about the moral thread of when you're dumb and you know you're dumb, should you really be the one having these conversations with these people? That's a personal responsibility, though. If he just doesn't... You can't come to me and say he doesn't know he's dumb.
The thing, I don't think he does, because I think he's surrounded by people who tell him that he's not.
That's still his fault.
Well, to some extent, but it's also the fault of just he managed to be able to get to be reasonably wealthy through doing something that doesn't take a whole lot of brain power, which is to say, getting hit in the head.
Yeah, okay.
And hitting other people in the head, to be fair.
How much does that have to do with his parents just setting him on that track?
I don't know, because I don't know anything about his childhood.
I don't know either. Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
really quick.
It's an interesting thing, but that's where they kind of...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just on the topic of peer-reviewed papers and stuff that we were on a few minutes ago. Article from 2017 by Smithwick et al. In the journal Paleontology on the purported presence of fossilized collagen fibers in an ichthyosaur and a theropod dinosaur.
Well, I remember this paper.
It's a really well-written paper, and it shreds Fiducia's arguments about collagen fibers.
Isn't that the one that found that that many of the collagen fibers in the ichthyosaur were preparation marks made by a drill? Yep.
In fact, many, if not all of them, I believe.
Yeah. All right. Here we go.
Came up with the idea, and then now they're putting feathers on, a lot of our common dinosaurs you see on TV and shows and things that you saw at the museums. But really, there's no evidence that.
We missed a membership milestone chat. April Van Ryan, who's been a member for 18 months and is at the amniote level, says, I want to move to a 5-sided island and become Pentecostal, with a Godzilla.
Very funny.
Nice.
Very funny. Very funny.
And AIG is the Richard Carrier of Richard Carriers. Oof. I mean, you would think it would be Richard Carrier, but apparently not.
A Richard Carrier is actually made up of interwoven smaller Richard Carriers that you can then carry your larger Richard Carriers in.
Oh, so it's recursive?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually is true. There's really no evidence that any dinosaur had feathers.
Okay. You can just go look with your naked eyes at fossils of dinosaurs with feathers. The only way to argue that that isn't real is to argue that those aren't dinosaurs, which you haven't even begun to do.
But she literally said that she saw this. That was the first thing she said.
She saw a reconstruction, not a fossil with feathers. So I'm going to give her a pass on that.
Fine.
And sometimes it's not even just feathers. If feathers are well anchored enough, they leave marks on the bone.
Yeah, quill knobs are a real thing.
Yep, we have quill knobs, and Velociraptor is probably the most famous, but there's actually an allosaur that has quill knobs on its forearms too, called a concavenator.
Yeah.
But they're angry about the media making things look cool.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing as when flat
Believe it
earthers
or not,
complain that
Beast
movies show the
Wars
Earth as a
wasn't
globe.
Beast Wars wasn't historically accurate.
Yeah. Look, whenever they complain about the media, it's just the same thing as flat earthers complaining about the globe in like the Universal Studios logo, or like when people when Superman flies around the Earth, it's the shape of a globe. It's just them complaining that most people don't buy into their nonsense.
Well, it'd be like a scientist who studies space-time being mad that Superman spinning the Earth backwards made time go backwards and didn't just, like, kill everybody.
The difference there is that that guy probably has something useful to say. Creationists and flat earthers are just whining about not everyone thinking like them. And here's the thing, guys. If you want everyone to think like you, you have the burden to become convincing. You are spectacularly unconvincing. That's why every year there are fewer and fewer creationists.
They actually have one other option.
Oh?
Yeah, it's called Project 2025.
Well, okay. Yeah, we're just going to hit play. If you guys want to hear someone go over literally every word of Project 2025's book, you can go you can go over to Chesh's channel. So there's that.
I want to
So if there's no evidence for those, do we see any evidence for dinosaurs and birds being related, but besides the feathers?
Well, there is some.
I mean, there's the fact that basically some of the animals that ICR thinks are just birds have skeletons that, if you looked at them without any indication about the integument, are very, 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 very obviously dinosaur skeletons.
Mm-hmm.
Similarities to.
I mean, show me
particularly
the difference between an Archaeopteryx and a Deinonychus skeleton. I don't think these guys would be able to tell them apart.
Yeah, it's like the size of the hand relative to the rest of the body, and like the robustness of the bones is basically it. The pelvis is also a bit more posteriorly directed, like the actual pubic bone in Archaeopteryx than in Deinonychus, but not by a lot.
Same people that like to
not much.
Whether or not you're a female or a male will be easily identified by your bones, and it's like
it's
not quite that simple.
easy. Yeah, it's really not that easy. There are characteristic differences that you can use to help indicate, but they're not 100% reliable, and you're not always going to have easy access to that. Vendelli 1998 for $5 says, so when did paleontologists first notice feather imprints in dinosaurs that didn't lead to birds? Well, first, I would argue that pretty much all the dinosaurs that have feather imprints did not lead to modern birds, because I don't think we have any good evidence that any of the feathered dinosaurs we have are directly ancestral to modern birds. In fact, I would be shocked if any of them were. But as far as the first feather imprints, I believe it's Archaeopteryx from, what is that, like 1877 or something like that?
A bit earlier than that, but yeah, Archaeopteryx was the first. If you want like a dinosaur, like something that's unambiguously a dinosaur, then most of those started appearing in the late 80s/90s.
So Lily P, or Silly Lily, says, Dapper Dinosaur, do you have a wishbone as a T-Rex? Well, first, I am not a T-Rex, I am a Ceratosaurus. But second, yes, I do have a wishbone.
And so does T-Rex.
Yes, and so does T-Rex. Yep. So a wishbone is basically your shoulder bone, the clavicles, but that's fused at the center point, instead of what you have in mammals, where it's generally not fused. And so
you can see mine a little bit.
Yeah,
right there.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of what we now know to be dinosaur wishbones were actually originally misidentified as turtle ribs. So,
yep,
we were just like, "What's this? It's probably a turtle rib." And she was like, "Nope, that's a dinosaur clavicle. You just didn't know." Oh, okay.
Yep. Or they just weren't recognized for a long time.
Yeah.
Neato.
Like Oviraptor actually was. They were labeled as interclavicles, I think, which dinosaurs don't have.
Yeah.
Oh. Interesting.
All right, here we go.
What's called the theropods, or the so-called median dinosaurs. Now, as a
okay, theropods are basically meat-eating, but that's just Dinosauria. Theropods are not defined by their diet. There are many omnivorous and even primarily herbivorous theropods. You can't just say that they're the meat-eating dinosaur. First, like, even our earliest meat-eating dinosaurs, like Herrerasaurus, I'm not actually even sure they're theropods. Brachiosaurus might actually be like more closely related to sauropods than it is to theropods. And also, primarily plant eaters, like the avamimids or Therizinosaurus, those are also theropods. Theropods have their own suite of various apomorphies that you need to use. Things like the particular kind of digit reduction. The promaxillary fenestra is not a thing you find outside of theropoda, things like that, right? These are things that you need to look at to say theropod. Just saying meat eating isn't going to cut it.
Yeah. And a lot of the herbivorous theropods actually have evidence of feathers, direct evidence.
Yeah.
We have it in ornithomimids, so like Gallimimus, and in Therizinosaurs with Bapiosaurus. It actually has a really beautiful mane of feathers.
Savage, they're evolutionizing our kids, Cobra, just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships, which actually brings us to 80 new members on this stream. So thank you very much, everybody. We'll take 5 drinks for that. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, here we go.
The creationist, we believe, of course, that dinosaurs were created by God on day 6 because they're land animals. And we believe, like the Bible says, every animal ate just plants originally. Even T-Rexes would have to eat just specific plants, probably, that nourished that particular dinosaur.
What does that have to do with whether or not birds are dinosaurs? I don't know where to get from there to the other. Like, how do you get from here to there? Because even if I accept it's true that pre-flood or pre-fall or whatever, all animals were herbivorous, and that birds were primarily made on day 5, whereas other dinosaurs were made on day 6. Like, where do we get it from there? Because here's the thing, right? Remember when I talked about earlier how many of these arguments would work for whales not being mammals? Whales, being water animals, were presumably also made on day 5, whereas most mammals were made on day 6, being not water animals. So does being made on day 5 presumably negate the mammalness of whales? Not according to creationists. So even if the bulk of Dinosauria are land animals that were made on day 6, that doesn't prevent a subgroup of dinosaurs from being made on day 5, just like a subgroup of mammals were. So what's the problem? And also, as far as eating meat or not, if God specially created all these different quote-unquote kinds, he still did so within a nested hierarchy that Linnaeus was able to discover, right? And so making birds as separate kinds doesn't say anything about whether or not they're dinosaurs. This is what I mean. They can't actually keep a consistent argument for why birds aren't dinosaurs that you can't just then turn around and apply to other things that they would disagree with, right? Like whales. It's my favorite example. It also works for bats, too, right? Were bats made on day 5 or 6? Presumably day 5. They can fly, right? So the flying and the water things are made on day 5, the land things on day 6. So I guess bats were made on day 5. Does that make them not mammals? Well, no, because it turns out taxonomy isn't based on what day of Genesis an animal would have presumably have been made on. It's not
the
a
day
concern.
of Genesis that has a questionable length of time, and a questionable length of time between those days.
Savage, they're evolutionizing our kids. Cobra for $2 says, what day were seals made on? Now, that is an interesting question. I don't know that I have heard a creationist
Water
address it.
puppies.
My guess is that what most creationists would say is, we're not sure, but we think it's day 5. But that's just one of those things that we might not be able to figure out, and it's one of those 2 days. And to which I would probably just say, like, whatever. I mean, I don't really care.
There's like a lot of random things in the Bible where you just have to say, I guess we don't know about that, and can never know about that, of other things that are seem to be very easily knowable. Yeah. I stand by my one criticism of God and the entire creation story when it comes to Genesis. Why didn't we start with soap? I don't know why God didn't give us soap. Like that's something you would need regardless of what you're eating or when you were made and whether or not you're wearing clothes. Soap would be a thing you would need regardless of whether or not if you're eating a fruit, apples are sticky. Like why did we not start with
You're being influenced by Dr. Stone, not the Bible. And you got to reverse that.
No.
But also, our archaeological evidence of soap goes back thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, soap is really
we
old.
know that people in the area were using soap, and the Bible just doesn't mention it. Just like we know that the people in the area were keeping cats, but the Bible doesn't mention it. I don't think it's to play devil's advocate for the Bible, I don't think it's beholden on the Bible to mention
I'm not
literally
blaming the
everything that
Bible,
existed.
I'm blaming God.
But we don't know that, according to the narrative, that Adam and Eve didn't use soap. Because when would it have come up in the narrative?
That would be a really, really poignant thing, because there's all these rules in the Bible about like keeping clean and look out for periods or whatever. No mention of soap.
Yeah, but there's also not a whole lot of mention of many other things that would have been important, right? Like, it also doesn't give you instructions on how to build a spear.
All I'm asking for is, you wouldn't have needed it in creation. I'm talking about Genesis here. Like, you would think that, like, oh, well, also on day 7, when God took a nap, he was like, oh, yeah, soap.
I don't see why that would be incumbent upon the author of Genesis to include, even if it were true.
I just think that there is no indication that God set people up for success, and the way he would have set, like, given us a freebie, you know what I mean? Humans should have started with soap. Adam and Eve should have had soap.
I don't know that we can conclude from the narrative that they didn't. That's the thing. You can't argue from silence that therefore there's absence, right?
No, I absolutely can, because...
No, you can't. That's not logical. That's completely illogical.
No. Hear me out. Hear me out. Because not everybody was using soap.
What evidence of that do you have?
I don't have any.
See, exactly. You're just saying, I wish this were included, and the fact that it's not makes me think that it wasn't even there. But that's not logical.
Not that I just wish it was included. I think it was a moral failing that if soap was around and not referenced at all, it needed to be, because soap is very important, and keeping clean helps keep people alive. Wash your damn hands.
But people already knew about soap when the Bible was being written.
Disgusting. Yeah, but the people that they were writing about didn't necessarily.
How do you know that?
That's what I'm saying.
I do not follow your train of logic at all. Nothing about this makes sense.
It should have 100% been part of any kind of sacrifice. Like, we gotta sacrifice a goat or a lamb or whatever to God on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. How is it not part of the procedure to cleanse yourself with soap?
It might well have been, because not every little last bit of everything is written down. This is actually a common
that's a really important. It's got instructions. Soap is not part of the instructions.
Okay, Chesh, have you ever read a recipe?
Yeah.
Has the recipe ever called for eggs?
Yeah.
Did it ever specify chicken eggs?
No, not usually.
Did you use chicken eggs anyway?
Unless it's specific. Okay, yeah, but listen, we're not talking about a recipe here. We're talking about how you properly worship a god or you go to hell.
Writing down a ritual is the same thing as writing down a ritual is the same thing as writing down a recipe. There are certain things that you don't think to include because they're just automatic. And when you say you go wash, people just know that you mean you wash with soap and water.
But if you take out eggs entirely, you get an entirely different situation.
Right, and if you take out the cleansing part, you get an entirely different situation. But they included the go wash yourself part. They don't have to necessarily say go wash yourself with soap if that's what everyone does.
No, I don't think
it's actually a problem we run into right now with recipes from the past.
I am
not the ancient
simply saying that God should have started us off with soap. There's no indication that he did. And if God didn't, he's a dick.
Okay.
And it should absolutely at least have a tertiary mention as part of the rules of cleansing that are in the Old Testament.
I'm with you up until that last step.
People drink bleach, even when you tell them not to.
Okay.
That doesn't mean. If I may, we have recordings of soap in Babylonian clay cylinders from 2800 BC.
Yeah. We know that people.
On day one, God spoke, "Let there be soap." That's all I'm asking for.
So you want soap to be the first thing God creates in the Genesis narrative? One narrative.
I would, if he's going to make anything, the first thing he should make is soap, so that way we can deal with cleaning up the mess he makes afterward.
Well, I feel like that is a very, very bizarre take on literary analysis. But
people are gross.
Yes, I agree. I'm going to hit play.
You know what it ate, nobody really knows. Mm-hmm. But after Adam and Eve sinned, then they started eating each other, and the world became more and more violent. And we do see a lot of evidence that dinosaurs were eating on each other, teeth embedded in the bones that healed over, that sort of thing. So we know there was a lot of violence going on. You know, there was theropods, most of which became the meat eaters, we believe. They had the type of teeth that could eat meat.
I love the implication that God designed these animals to eat meat, but then he was like, but eat a salad anyway. which is essentially like asking someone like, okay, here's a salad, and you're not allowed to use your hands, but you can use these steak knives, and here's like 6 steak knives that you can use to cut up the salad and eat somehow with it. Try not to hurt yourself.
We're not going to give you a pestle and mortar.
No pestle and mortar.
Again, nobody really knows. They could have been omnivores,
Mm-hmm.
but they have to guesstimate by what they find. And so they believe these dinosaurs are the ones that have the bones that are a little more hollow.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually not entirely true, because hollow bones are basal to just archosauria, right? This is pneumaticity in the bones, right? Like actual connections between the bones and the lungs. That's just an archosaur thing.
Yep.
And certain dinosaurs went further with it, and certain other dinosaurs went not so far with it. But like, it's not just theropods. Like sauropods had extensive pneumaticity in things like their vertebrae, specifically to lighten the neck and whatnot.
Sauropod bones are weird. I've been finding a lot of them lately, and they're the best way I can describe them is they're just holy.
Yeah, they really are. They're full of holes. So
There's
it's not
more
just a
air
theropod
in the
thing.
bone than there is bone.
Oh boy, Batman.
A lot of dinosaurs have more salad bones because
He said salad bones. He meant solid bones, but he said salad bones. I'm taking a drink because I was just talking about salads, and that amuses me.
That's cute.
God designed them, of course, to be quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And so the design was there. And so there is a little similarity to birds in that regard, that they have similar hollow bones, 'cause it makes them lighter. And
Okay, but my guy, you think Archaeopteryx was a bird, and that like Velociraptor was a dinosaur, but the skeletal differences are basically just their slight scale differences, and Archaeopteryx had a pelvis that was slightly more posteriorly oriented than Velociraptor. That's it. You can't tell me that, like, oh, well, there's a few tiny little similarities, but overall, I think they actually have very different skeletons. And then also in the same, like, talk or while working for the same organization, tell me that Archaeopteryx and Microraptor are birds, whereas Velociraptor, which is not in the same, just in the same family as Microraptor, but in the same subfamily as Microraptor, are just like, you know, dinosaurs versus birds, when there's virtually no skeletal difference at all. If you want to accept Microraptor and Archaeopteryx as birds, then you don't get to say that there are skeletal differences between birds and dinosaurs. I'm sorry.
You know, the Creation Research Center in Australia, I was talking with a few of the creationists from there once, and I managed to get them to say that if a dinosaur was found with feathers, it was a bird.
Oh yeah, you
if
get
it
that
didn't
again.
have feathers, it was a dinosaur.
Yeah, which means that the only difference is just integument. We got a couple things here.
Yeah.
Naramda for $2 says, sorry, I'm skipping Centered. Centered for $5 says, I love that a non sequitur about soap has totally derailed the conversation.
That's what I'm here for.
Naramda for $2 says, let's see. This read to how This read to how outfigure Dapper Hay. Are you okay? This read to how outfigure Dapper Hay. I don't know what that means, but those are the words. My Unfinished Journey, who's been a member for 19 months, is at the amulet level, says, what is this? Dinosaurs, goblins, and creationists? Oh my.
Hey.
Yeah, it is. Alright, here we go. And goblin. Oh, you didn't say goblin.
Oh, before you hit play, just the kicker to that story is I got them to say that Tyrannus was a bird because it had feathers.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I think it's basically just small T-Rex.
Yep.
Okay, sure. If you want to say, because at that point T-Rex is basically just a bird. Okay, yeah, all right. And here's the thing, that doesn't actually change anything. All that does is change which part of the phylogeny of Dinosauria we stick birds at, and it just moves it down a bit. So basically at that point you're just saying, well, Silurosauria is where birds are. Which is weird, but it also doesn't negate those things from being dinosaurs. It just means that a much larger group of dinosaurs are birds, according to you, than most people would say.
It's
Well,
almost
I
like
mean,
they don't
not
understand what
even-
they're arguing about.
Oh, they don't.
No.
But it's not even Silurosauria. It'd be Tetanurae. Because we have Concavenator, which
With
is
the
an
colon.
allosauriid with
Yeah.
feather attachments.
That's basically all of the theropods that anyone can ever name except for like Carnotaurus.
Except for you.
And Ceratosaurus, yeah. But like, yeah, that basically, if you name a theropod that you've ever heard of, it's probably a tetnuran, which would make it a bird, according to this.
Yep.
Which is basically theropods barely even exist at that point. They're just all birds.
Yep. And considering feathers might just be ancestral to all dinosaurs.
Yeah, that's the other thing. We have ornithischians with feathers.
Yeah, Psittacosaurus is a bird, apparently.
So, which would just mean the dinosaur and bird is just the same word.
Yep.
In fact, it might actually
Alamosaurus
mean
is a bird.
Ornithodyra and bird are the same word, and that pterosaurs are birds, Lagasucids are birds. Basically, anything that's more closely related to dinosaurs than crocodiles just becomes a bird at this point.
When does this discussion turn into a discussion about semantics as opposed to identification and classification? Or is classification and identification also just semantics?
Well, that's part of the problem, right? Because bird isn't a technical term, right? Bird doesn't mean anything in science. And so if you're going to argue...
We are right back to what I said earlier at the beginning, where I was like, you're taking a societal term and trying to apply a scientific value to that and a technical value to it that it does not hold.
Mm-hmm.
So when they say, well, this is what I think of as a bird, is all they're really saying is, I put bird somewhere else on the phylogeny. And that's not an argument against the ancestry. It's not an argument against the evolution. It's just, what things do you want to personally call a bird? And here's the thing. There's nothing technically wrong with saying that Eutyrannus is a bird. It's weird. I wouldn't normally say it. But if you think that that counts as a bird, I mean, okay, but that doesn't do anything to change the actual shape of the cladograms that we've built up for dinosaurs.
It's the reason why classifying... It's the reason why classifying genres of music is so incredibly difficult, because it's not designed to technically fit in a box.
Yeah. Although,
it doesn't work that way.
At least organisms do actually fit in boxes called clades. So there is that advantage when it comes to science and cladistics. But anyway, here's
because these are social expectations and social derivatives.
When you're doing that, you're not talking about bird. You're talking about technical groups like Aviale and Alulavis and Penaraptora and things like that have
which are painstakingly specific.
Right.
Yeah. It is worth pointing out that one of the sides in this discussion has anatomical criteria for classification.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The other just looks at it and says, good enough.
Yeah, I want to point out,
we're a little woman, though.
We're more than 6 minutes into this, and in order to say birds aren't dinosaurs, the first step is to tell us what a dinosaur is, and then the second step is to tell us what a bird is, and then the third step is to tell us why it is that birds don't meet the definition for dinosaurs. Have we gotten to step one? Nope. We haven't even bothered with step one. We haven't even attempted to approach step one, which is one of the common things about creationists. Is there's a way to make the argument that you're trying to make. You're not even trying to make that argument.
Yep.
I'm going to hit play. We've only got a little bit more time, and then we're going to be done.
Strong. It can go pretty quick.
But
other than that, there's really not a lot of similarities. The hip structure is completely different.
Just take a drink. Okay.
I ran out of drink.
There are two important factors about dinosaur hips that make them dinosaur hips. One is the strong fusion between the spine. I guess there's three things about dinosaur hips that make them dinosaur hips. One is the strong connection between the sacral vertebrae and the actual sacrum, which in many cases forms what's called a synsacrum, where essentially they become one big solid piece of bone involving a whole bunch of caudal vertebrae and the sacrum. That is something that we find in birds. Birds typically they universally have synsacrum, which is a thing for dinosaurs. That is an important characteristic of being a dinosaur. Second, there's three or more sacral vertebrae. Birds typically have 20-something. It's ridiculous. Birds have so many sacral vertebrae, it's absurd. And dinosaurs, when I say three or more, it's usually much more like 5 to 12 to even more. But it has to be at least 3. And that's another commonality between birds and dinosaurs. Dinosaurs, that's a characteristic of dinosaurs, is having 3 or more sacral vertebrae. All birds have that. The last characteristic of dinosaur hips is the open or extensively perforate acetabulum. The acetabulum is where your hip socket is. It's what your hip socket is, basically. That's the technical term for it.
But we're not asking the real question. How many C's thick?
3.
Ooh, that's pretty thick.
Yeah. So birds also have open acetabula, which is a characteristic of dinosaurs. So when you say that birds and the dinosaurs have totally different hips, Birds have all the hip characteristics that make a dinosaur a dinosaur. So I don't know what they mean. Do they mean that like the pubic bone in birds points posteriorly and doesn't join at the center line? Okay, great. But pointing anteriorly and joining at the center line was never a diagnostic criterion for dinosaur in the first place. It is a thing that's weird about bird hips that isn't found generally in dinosaurs. But it's also not found in all the animals that Clary wants to call birds, because it's not found in Archaeopteryx. Archaeopteryx does not have a pubic bone that points all the way to the posterior and doesn't fuse at the middle line. It does fuse at the midline, and it's only slightly oriented posteriorly. It's mostly pointed just straight down. So what is the difference? Mm-hmm. And do you think he's going to tell us when we hit play?
Oh, never.
No. They're not just totally different. In what way? What way that matters? What is a dinosaur hip like? I'm sure we won't find out.
And that's what a lot of people
Dapper,
forget.
Speaking of hips, I just sent you a picture of a sauropod hip I found earlier this week.
Nice.
Yeah.
They forget that the hip structure, if you pull the legs down and walk like a bird, birds kind of walk on their knees.
So the position of the femur. Okay, I'm going to ask someone who's a
I think he's
layman.
stealing something from AIG.
He is.
Here.
Okay, Chesh, you're not an anatomist.
Ah.
Do you know what a femur is?
Yes.
What's a femur? What part of your body is that in?
Isn't it part of your leg?
Mm-hmm. Is it part of your hip?
I don't think so.
Right. So you, who has never studied anatomy, is not a scientist. You know better.
I kind of looked at anatomy.
Yeah, I mean, you like went to high school and whatnot.
No, I'm an artist.
Well, okay, there's that too. Yeah.
I don't know names of things. I know kind of what things look like.
Yeah, so you who are not someone who is well studied in the ways of vertebrate paleontology, you know enough to know that when you talk about a hip and you talk about a femur, that those aren't the same thing.
Correct, yes.
Taking a drink the hips are totally different. If you pull the femurs down, oh my god. Okay.
If you pull the femurs down, it'll detach.
Well, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
Theropods balance at the knee. That is true for birds, and it is true for other theropods.
I got quizzed again. You tricked me.
Birds have very, very short tails, which means that in order to balance from the knee, they need to move their knees forward. If you're going to move your knee forward, you have to bring your femur up, because your femur is where the pivot point for where you can position the knee is, which is why bird femurs are roughly horizontal, whereas most theropod femurs that aren't birds are mostly vertical. But there's this cool experiment that was done where they were like, well, how would birds walk if they did have long tails? So they took some baby chickens and they stuck weights at the end of their butts by basically attaching small little plungers to the backs of their butts.
I love science sometimes.
Yes.
That's
And
the
there is
most ridiculous nonsense.
There is
The
adorable
video
footage.
is so funny.
There's adorable and hilarious footage of these chicks walking. But here's the thing. Now that they have that weight of the tail behind them, they position their femurs roughly vertically because they're balancing from the knees like any other theropod. And when you have a large-tailed counterbalance, you hold your femurs vertically. So it's not that birds have a natural difference in their femur position. It's that's where they have to hold their femurs in order to stay
weight
balanced.
distribution.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you were to say, find somehow a non-avian theropod like Deinonychus and dock its tail, it would bring its femurs up. Because otherwise it would fall over. That's not a difference. That's in fact something that, you can recreate in birds. You can make birds walk like other theropods by just sticking a weight at the back of them. And it's also nothing to do with the hip. And again, what part of having a vertically oriented femur is part of the definition of dinosauria? I don't know, because Timothy Clary hasn't even made the case as to what a dinosaur is. He's just saying, well, some dinosaurs have their femurs like this. Birds have their femurs like this. And it's not exactly the same. Therefore, okay, great. Guess what? Whales don't do the same thing with their femurs that other mammals do. Does that make whales not mammals? No. No, it doesn't. Whales have very different hips than other mammals. Does that make whales not mammals? No.
It's also, I think, important to note who he's talking to, who his audience is, how many people in his audience he's speaking in scientific terms, kind of, but he's using social language. But what the people he's talking to do not know these scientific terms.
Mm.
They might not know what a femur is or even have a rough idea. They'll just be like, oh, it's a part of the hip that's whatever, blah, 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 blah. Or maybe they'll assume that it's a smaller portion of a hip identified, right? They don't know. Or they're talking to people who are just, I know what a dinosaur is because that's the toy my kid plays with.
Right.
Like, that's what that's who he's talking to. I know what a bird is because I see seagulls on a regular basis or pigeons on a regular basis.
Pteranodon
right?
and the woolly mammoth because they came in a bucket of dinosaurs.
Right, exactly. That's what they're thinking of. These are the people who he's talking to. And that's not to say these are bad people.
Oh, yeah,
I'm saying that he's purposefully... Yeah, it's not a crime to not know technical terms. It's not a crime to not spend a lot of time educating yourself in fields that don't necessarily apply to your day-to-day life. However, when you are a professional and you're trying to put forward a professional podcast with completely garbage audio, you would think that you would hold a degree of responsibility of making sure that your audience even understands what the hell you're talking about to start with.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, it is coming up to the time where we're about to wrap up. So what I'm going to say is first, Doc Dino, do you have anything that's coming up that you want people to know about?
Sure. I'm currently working on a video talking about the very famous and cool-looking dinosaur Parasaurolophus.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually just capturing footage for that while we were talking here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I was yelling about soap.
And also, I am hoping to start up a podcast I used to run. Hoping to start that back up soon. Not decided what day that'll be, but hopefully it'll come back next week.
Okay.
And I have a small second channel with some friends where we talk about dinosaur designs and media, if you're into that sort of thing.
Nice.
We're called the Boneheads.
Josh, what do you got coming up?
I've got Monday where I'm delving into some social online harassment issues that I call Moon Days because they're all cows. I'm covering Project 2025 and I'm reading that on Tuesday and Wednesday. And on Thursday, I've been reading the JD Vance dossier that nobody's allowed to look at according to Elon Musk. On Fridays, I have Dumbfeck Friday. On some Saturdays, I have the Unnamed Tavern. That has Dapper in it, and you guys should totally come and check that out because it is a hell of a lot of fun. And we talk a little bit more about politic-y, world newsy type stuff. I also do art over on Twitch, and I've been playing something called Supermarket Simulator that I have just lost my mind to. So if you're interested in that, those are coming out on the week. If you want to follow me on Twitch to watch them live, you can. But if you'd rather watch them on YouTube, and you can watch them at a sped up rate or whatever you want to do, those come out at 7 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday and Sunday, respectively. Soap! You're gross! Wash yourselves! For the love of God, too many people do not wash their butt cracks. Wash it with soap! What is wrong with you? People are disgusting.
Okay. So, let's take a look at what's coming up on this channel.
I will be, if you do not shower tonight, I will be under your bed and I will shove soap in your butt.
Some people might be into that.
Well...
Anyway, what's coming up on this channel? Tuesday, we're looking at Matt with Maddie. Maddie from Science Side Up should be back. We're going to take a look at more Raw Matt, and we will once again go into the updates on the NIFB abuse scandal that's happening with Pastor Steve Anderson. That won't be the main focus, but we will touch on it. Then on Thursday at noon, the Tuesday is at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Then on Thursday at noon Pacific, at 3 p.m. Eastern, we will be releasing the, basically, if you remember the series I did about the Muslim Lantern and Sabur Ahmed, that is, the supercut is coming out for that. That is I think that's over 4 hours, so if you want to watch that premiere, bring snacks. Bring snacks and maybe drinks. Then on Saturday, we're going to be following up with this. I believe Ashanti will be back, so... I might also try to fix the audio on this, maybe, if I remember. Maybe not. But then also on Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, over on Top Hats Off, we're doing episode 5 of Star Trek Lexington, featuring, of course, Cheshire. And yeah, so you saw the teaser for that a couple times if you watched this whole thing.
A lot of fun.
And yeah, please do check that out. It is a lot of fun. And I'm also trying to get that channel to get to the point where I can turn on super chats and memberships. So
You're really close though too, right?
Yeah, I'm more than halfway on the view hours, and I'm already there on the subscriber count. So
hell yeah!
If you want to help me out with that, what I would suggest is go to Top Hats Off, grab the Power Rangers Jungle Beast playlist, and then just turn it on and walk away, and let it play. All right, with that, everybody, I want to say thank you so much. I want to say a special thank you to Regios, who gifted a total of 70 memberships today, which is outstanding. And with that, I will see all of you, hopefully, on Tuesday. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Also, if you want, over on the Discord, I am going to be watching 4 episodes of Power Rangers Jungle Beasts. Not Jungle Beast, Jungle Fury. Jungle Beast was the show I ran. Jungle Fury is the actual series that Disney produced. Jungle Fury. There you go. You're going to watch it on Discord.
We know which one is truly better.
Yeah, I mean, it's Jungle Beast, obviously. But Jungle Fury is pretty cool, too. We're up to 5 Rangers after our initial start at 3. So, you know. All right, bye, everybody.
Bye!
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovend, Phil Cavara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, North Texas Fossils, John Ackerman, Strawberry Vein, Dr. Tapioca Weasel, Elron Teller, Horseflesh, Ian Chen, Calvin Brostig Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Sphincter of Doom, and Lawless. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.